Welcome to the Walking the Way podcast. I'm Pastor Chris. I love this quote from the Roman emperor and Stoic thinker Marcus Aurelius. He said, "What stands in the way becomes the way." Now, certainly Marcus Aurelius was not thinking about the cross and about Jesus when he said that. However, that idea still holds great truth. What stands in the way becomes the way. The truth still echoes because in the life of Jesus, what stood in the way became the very way. The betrayal, the arrest, the judgment by Pontius Pilate, the nails, the tomb, the mocking. What would appear to be on the surface an obstacle to his path was his path. None of it stopped him. All of it carried him forward straight to the center of his purpose because Jesus said of himself that it was for this purpose that the Son of Man, God the Son, the Logos, the Word incarnate, the visible, touchable, hearable expression of the grace and mercy and power and the message of God to us, of redemption and reconciliation, it all came through the cross. The cross was not an obstacle to redemption. It was never something in the way of the plan and the path of Jesus. It was the way. It was the plan that God had for the Son. It was the plan that God has for us. The Apostles' Creed says it this way: He suffered under Pontius Pilate, was crucified, dead, and buried. Those aren't side notes. That wasn't an interruption to the plan that God had for us through Christ. That was the purpose for which he came. How often is it that the very thing we think is impeding us is the thing that God sent to shape us? The very thing that we think is the obstacle to accomplishing the goals that God has put in our hearts for our lives, for his glory, for man's betterment, and for the accomplishing of God's will in our lives, that thing that seems to be impeding us is the very thing that God sent to make us. Those aren't side notes. They're the stones on the path that Jesus walked for you and for me and for the entire world. He suffered so that we could be healed. His suffering was not a side note, an accident, a roadblock on the path. That was the path. He suffered so we could be healed. He was crucified so we could be redeemed. The innocent man laid down his life so that guilty men might find life in him. He was buried so that we could rise. So my question for you today, and what I'll be considering and we'll be considering together at First Congregational Church of Naples, Florida this coming Sunday, is this question: what is standing in our way? What do we think is impeding us that is the very thing that God sent to shape and to make us? What if the very place of pain, pressure, or delay isn't the thing stopping us, but it's the very thing that God has sent to move us forward? That's what the cross teaches us. Oh, we're redeemed at the cross. It, in and of itself, is the message of redemption and the path of freedom and the means of reconciliation to God by faith in the finished work of Jesus in paying the penalty that we could never pay, even though it was a debt he didn't owe. That's what grace is. And grace comes in many forms, and among them is the hard thing to shape us, because God's not interested primarily in our immediate comfort, in our ultimate satisfaction in the day, in this world, but in reshaping us, making us fit for his purposes and fit for the worship that we will enjoy in heaven. Thomas Goodwin, the Puritan preacher, he put it this way: Christ chose the worst of deaths that we might have the best of hopes. He suffered under Pontius Pilate, was crucified, dead, and buried. That's our faith. That's our Redeemer. And that is our way. God bless you today. Amen.